Number 3. Janice Lynn Potter. On the night of April 15, 1986, there was an intense rainstorm in Baltimore, Maryland. The rain was so bad that 24-year-old Janice Potter canceled a shopping trip with her sister. Janice and her sister were planning to go shopping for maternity clothes because Janice was 2 months pregnant. The child was supposed to be the first child of Janice and her husband, 26-year-old William Potter. Janice was an accountant and William was a computer programmer at a bank. He was also attending night school at the University of Maryland. That night, William and Janice had dinner together at home. Around 6 p.m., William left for school. When he left, Janice was in the family room in the basement watching TV. They had a wood-burning stove going in their townhouse. It made the house too warm, so William left a sliding glass door in the basement open a crack to let out some of the hot air. It poured rain throughout the evening. When William returned home at 10 p.m., he found his wife dead on the floor of the living room. She had been stabbed multiple times in the chest. She was fully dressed, and there were no signs of sexual assault. There was no evidence of a break-in or forced entry. It's believed that the killer let themselves in through the sliding glass door. Some of Janice's jewelry and a pair of antique sterling silver salt and pepper shakers were taken, but nothing else was stolen, and the home had not been ransacked. The police were baffled by the murder. The first suspect was Janice's husband, William. However, the police were able to confirm that he was at school that night. Also, Janice and William appeared to be happy, so there was no motive for him to kill his wife. Although some jewelry and a pair of salt and pepper shakers were stolen, the police do not think robbery was the motive. In the weeks leading up to the murder, Janice had been receiving harassing phone calls. The police think that the caller was the person who killed her. However, the police do not know that person's identity. The police think that a neighbor may have seen something, and they're hoping that person will come forward. However, at the time of this video, it's been 39 years since 24-year-old Janice Lynn Potter was killed, and her case is considered cold. Number 2. Amanda Tusing. As it approached midnight on June 15, 2000, there was a thunderstorm in the Jonesboro, Arkansas area. A few minutes to midnight, 20-year-old Amanda Tusing left the apartment of her fiancé, Matthew Irvin. She was driving alone to her parents' home in Dell, Arkansas, which was about 40 miles away. Tragically, she never made it home. A few hours after Tusing was supposed to arrive home, her father and brother went to look for her. They assumed she had car trouble. Not far from her fiancé's apartment, they found her car parked on the side of Highway 18. Her father and brother checked the car, and there was nothing wrong with it. The battery was working, and there was gas in the tank. The wipers were stopped mid-wipe, and her radio was tuned to her favorite station. There were no signs of a struggle, and nothing was stolen. In the car was her purse with her keys inside of it, and her cell phone, which was dead. It was as if 20-year-old Amanda Tusing had just walked away and disappeared. This did not make any sense to Tusing's family and friends. She was happy with life and the direction it was going. She was engaged to her high school sweetheart and recently had purchased her wedding gown. Tusing also had recently graduated from college. Finally, it was a dark and stormy night. Why would she pick that time to walk away from her life? 3 days later, her family learned she had not chosen to disappear. The body of 20-year-old Amanda Tusing was found in a ditch full of rainwater about 50 miles west of where her car was found. Her death was just as mysterious as the circumstances surrounding her disappearance. There were barely any signs of trauma on the body. There was only a small bruise on the back right side of her head. There were no signs of sexual assault. It's possible that the water washed away evidence of a sexual assault, but there were no signs of trauma in the genital area. The cause of death was undetermined. However, the pathologist believes that Tusing was dead before she went into the water. There was water in her nostrils, but not in her lungs. The police were at a loss when it came to suspects. Tusing didn't have any enemies, and her friends and family didn't know anyone who would want to hurt her. Tusing's fiancé, Matthew Irvin, cooperated with the investigators. He took 3 polygraph exams and passed all 3. It's believed that the killer was a stranger to Amanda Tusing. However, it's unknown why he killed her. Nothing was stolen, and it did not appear that she was sexually assaulted. One theory from the police is that she was murdered by a serial killer. They noted that the killer didn't leave behind any evidence. The police think that this suggests it wasn't the killer's first murder. However, if the police connected Tusing's murder with any other homicides, they have not made that information public. Tusing's parents believe that they partially know what happened that night. A police officer, or someone posing as a police officer, pulled her over. The killer then lured her into their car and at some point murdered Tusing. It's suspected that she was suffocated or possibly strangled and then dumped in the ditch. It's been 25 years since 20-year-old Amanda Tusing was murdered on that dark and stormy night, and her murder remains unsolved. The police and Tusing's family still hope one day her killer will be identified. Number 1. Tom Dorr Sr. On January 6, 1996, the east coast of North America was slammed with one of the worst blizzards of the century. Pleasantville, New York is a village of 7,500 people about 20 miles from the coast. Their volunteer firefighter department thought it'd be better for the volunteers to come to the firehouse for the night for standby duty. One person they called was 50-year-old Tom Dorr Sr., a 17-year veteran of the department. Tom was the manager of a water pump station for the Department of Public Works. Tom was often called a gentle giant. He was about 6'7", but he had a calm and laid-back demeanor. Tom took the call from the department at about 5 p.m. and he said he would come in for the night. He told them he would be there shortly. However, he never made it to the fire hall that night. The other volunteers thought he couldn't make it to the fire hall because of the storm. Then, the next morning at 8:30, the fire hall got an unusual phone call. It was Tom's wife, Jane Dorr, and she was looking for her husband. His fellow volunteer firefighters were concerned, so they began to search for Tom. This was tough because the area was hit with more than 2 feet of snow. They searched a wooded area in a park a short distance from his home. Tom liked to go to the area to feed wild turkeys. He was known to do this in all kinds of weather. About an hour into their search, the body of 50-year-old Tom Dorr Sr. was found when a searcher tripped over it. His body was about 150 yards from his home, buried under 2 feet of snow. It was clear that he had been murdered. Days later, a pathologist would determine that Tom was beaten in the head and chest with a blunt object, most likely a baseball bat. He was then slashed in the face with a knife and his throat was slit. The murder weapons were not found at the scene. The only thing they found was a plastic bag of bird food. The police did not think it was a random attack. Many people wouldn't have gone to the park during a blizzard. Also, it did not appear that anything was stolen. Tom would have also been an odd choice for a random act of violence. Most people seeking random victims will pick someone they can impose their physical will on. Tom was a large man who volunteered as a firefighter. The police briefly questioned Tom's family after the body was found. Tom and Jane had two sons living with them at the time, 15-year-old Thomas Jr. and 25-year-old Jeff. Thomas Jr. was Jane and Tom's biological son, and Jeff was Jane's son from a previous relationship, but Tom had adopted him. The three family members were interviewed separately. Thomas Jr. said he was home all night. Jane and Jeff said that around 5:30 p.m. they went to the woods with Tom to feed the wild turkeys. Tom planned to feed the turkeys and then continue on to the fire hall on foot. Jeff and Jane said that the weather was getting too bad and it was dark, so they turned back before making it to the woods. They claimed they knew nothing about the murder. Jeff was asked what he did after he returned home, and he had an odd story. Jeff admitted he was addicted to heroin. He said that earlier that day, he had asked Tom to use his car to drive to New York City, which was about 35 miles away, to buy drugs, but his stepfather said no. Jeff said they had argued about it, but Tom had relented and agreed to let him drive his car. Jeff said that he went to New York City and returned that same night. Meanwhile, Jane told the police that Jeff had been home all night. After Jane was confronted with this contradiction, she hired a lawyer and didn't allow the police to talk to her sons. The police continued to investigate Jane and her son Jeff. Friends and family said that Jane and Jeff rarely, if ever, went with Tom to feed the wild turkeys. Why would they go with him on the night of a blizzard? It turned out that there was some strain in Tom and Jane's marriage. A year earlier, Tom had visited his parents in Florida, and he decided he wanted to move there. Jane wanted to stay in New York. A friend of Tom said that the couple constantly bickered, and Tom supposedly said it was a marriage of convenience. A big source of trouble was Jeff's drug use. Also, Tom would not allow Jeff to use his car to go buy drugs. So the police didn't believe that Tom would let Jeff use his car that night, especially because a blizzard was descending on the area. The police also learned that after it's believed that Tom was murdered, Jeff went to the woods where his body was found. He met up with a friend, and the two men drove to New York City together. After talking to people who knew the family, the police developed 4 theories as to what happened to Tom Dorr Sr. The first is that Jeff was out of heroin and he needed his fix. He wanted to use Tom's car, but Tom refused to let him. Jeff knew that Tom would be alone in an isolated area. Jeff, possibly working with his friend, whom he met up with in the woods, snuck up on Tom and bashed him with a baseball bat. After he was incapacitated, he cut his stepfather's face and slit his throat. Jeff then used the car to drive to New York City to buy drugs. The police's second theory is that Tom's wife, Jane, killed him. The police immediately thought her behavior was strange. Most notably, nearly immediately she hired a lawyer and stopped cooperating with the investigators. In an interview in 1996 with a newspaper reporter, Jane said it's common for people to get lawyers. The lead detective in Tom's case said that innocent family members rarely hire lawyers. He said that most family members will do anything they can to help with the investigation, and he said that Jane did the complete opposite. Also, several days after the murder, there was a vigil for Tom, and Jane and her children did not attend. The police believe that Jane's motive was simple. She was stuck in a loveless marriage, and her husband was worth more dead than alive. 2 days after Tom died, Jane called his workplace and asked about the benefits he had in case of his death. She learned that the benefits were worth about $70,000, which, accounting for inflation in 2025, is over $144,000. The police also discovered that 18 days after the murder, Jane applied to get a $105,000 payout from Tom's life insurance policy. Counting for inflation, that is over $207,000 in 2025. 2 months after his death, she tried to get the benefits from his workplace. However, she was denied in both cases because the police officially considered her a suspect. She appealed both decisions. She ended up winning the appeal on the money for the life insurance policy, and she was paid the money. However, her appeal on the benefits would drag on for years. In 1997, a year after the murder, there was another vigil for Tom, and once again, Jane and her children did not attend. Later that year, Jane and her 2 sons moved out of state to Connecticut, and she began using her maiden name, Sawyer. Jane Sawyer's hearing about the money from the workplace benefits was to be held in 2001, 5 years after the murder. In January 2001, before the hearing, the police publicly announced that Jeff and Jane were both suspects. This brings us to the third theory. Jane and Jeff committed the murder together. The police believe that Jane could have gotten her drug-addicted son to murder Tom with a promise of money. They planned the murder together and covered up their involvement. Then finally, the fourth theory is that Jeff murdered his stepfather without Jane knowing what he had planned to do. After he committed the murder, he went to her and told her what had happened, and she helped him get away with it. Although they were named as suspects, Jane and Jeff were not charged with any crimes. 14 years later, in 2015, the police revealed that they had enough evidence to charge Jeff and Jane with tampering with evidence. They did not reveal what evidence had been tampered with. Also, they did not want to charge them with the crime because tampering with evidence is just a misdemeanor, and they were trying to build a murder case against them. In January 2024, a reporter with the Examiner News spoke with Tom's sister-in-law. Tom's sister-in-law said that the police searched the family's home shortly after Tom's body was found. The family kept a wooden baseball bat close to one of the doors. Burned remnants of a baseball bat were found in the family's fireplace. During the blizzard, the family most likely had a fire going. That could be the evidence that was tampered with, but the police have never confirmed that. The police said that although they believed Jane and Jeff were involved in Tom's murder, there's no physical evidence to prove it. A big problem is that Tom was killed during a blizzard, and the crime scene was buried in 2 feet of snow, so a lot of evidence was destroyed. At the time of this video, the murder of Tom Dorr Sr. is as cold as the night he was murdered. Tom's family continues to hold an annual vigil for him. His family has never attended. The police want to make it clear they do not think that Tom and Jane's son, Thomas Dorr Jr., had anything to do with the crime. At the time of this recording, Jeff Dorr is about 54 and his mother, Jane Sawyer, is about 83. Thank you so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed it, we'd really appreciate it if you subscribed. Also, don't forget to watch our shorts on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Once again, thank you for watching.